A pharmacist I'd never met before handed me my prescription and whispered, "Don't take these. Throw them out." When I asked why, she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Please, just trust me." That night, I Googled the medication. The top result read, "Fatal overdose in multiple cases, banned worldwide in 47 countries." Then I checked who prescribed it to me. It was my own mother. My name is Isabel Chen. I'm 32 years old, a high school English teacher in Sacramento, California. This is the story of how a stranger saved my life and how I discovered that the person I trusted most in the world was trying to kill me. If you want to hear how this unfolds, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Trust me, you need to hear this story. 6 months ago, I started getting the worst migraines of my life. I'm talking about pain so intense that I couldn't see straight, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but lie in a dark room and wait for it to pass. The first time it happened, I was in the middle of teaching Romeo and Juliet to my sophomore class. I was explaining the balcony scene when suddenly it felt like someone had driven a spike through my left eye. The pain was so sharp and so sudden that I actually gasped out loud. I managed to excuse myself and made it to the faculty bathroom before I started throwing up. One of my students found me 20 minutes later, curled up on my classroom floor with all the lights off and my jacket over my face to block out any remaining light. It was humiliating and terrifying at the same time. I went to my regular doctor, Dr. Patel, who I'd been seeing for years. He ran a bunch of tests, blood work, CT scan, the whole deal. Everything came back normal. Probably stress headaches, he told me. Teaching is a demanding job. You're probably not sleeping enough, maybe drinking too much caffeine. He prescribed some basic pain medication and sent me on my way, but the migraines kept coming, sometimes twice a week, sometimes 3 times. They were unpredictable and completely debilitating. I had to cancel plans constantly. I missed my book club 3 months in a row. I was supposed to fly to Boston to visit my brother Julian, but I had to cancel the trip because I was in the middle of a 3-day migraine that wouldn't break. My principal started pulling me aside to ask if everything was okay. "We're concerned about the amount of sick days you're taking, Isabel. Is there something we should know about?" I assured her I was working on it, that I was seeing doctors, that I would get it under control. But honestly, I was scared. What if this was just my life now? What if I had to live with this pain forever? That's when my mom stepped in. My mother, Dr. Patricia Chen, is a physician. She runs her own private practice here in Sacramento and has been a doctor for 30 years. She's respected, successful, the kind of doctor who gets great reviews online and has patients who've been coming to her for decades. After my dad died 5 years ago, it's been just the 2 of us. My brother Julian lives in Boston, so he's not around much. Mom and I are close, really close. We have dinner together at least twice a week, and we talk on the phone almost every day. When she found out how bad my migraines were getting, and that Dr. Patel wasn't able to help, she immediately took charge. "Isabel, let me handle this," she said one night over dinner at her house. "I know your medical history better than any other doctor possibly could. Come to my office and we'll figure this out properly. I promise you, we're going to solve this." I was so relieved. Having my mom take over my care felt like the best possible solution. She loved me. She wanted me to get better, and she had way more experience than Dr. Patel. So I started going to her office for appointments, and she began trying different treatments. First, she prescribed standard migraine medications, sumatriptan, rizatriptan, medications specifically designed to stop migraines. They helped a little bit, but the migraines still kept coming back. Then she tried stronger pain relievers, then beta blockers that were supposed to prevent the migraines from starting in the first place, then a preventive medication that I had to take every single day. Nothing worked for long. I'd get maybe a week or 2 of relief, and then the migraines would come roaring back, sometimes even worse than before. My life started revolving around them. I couldn't make plans because I never knew when I'd be laid out by another attack. I stopped going out with friends. I turned down a promotion at school that would have meant leading the English department because I couldn't commit to the extra responsibilities when I was missing so much work already. Through all of this, my mom seemed just as frustrated as I was. Every time I came in for an appointment and told her the latest medication wasn't working, She'd shake her head and make notes in my chart. "We'll figure this out, sweetheart," she'd say. "Some cases are just more difficult than others, but I won't give up on you." I never questioned her treatment. Why would I? She was my mother. She was a doctor. She had my best interests at heart. When you trust someone that completely, it doesn't even occur to you to get a second opinion or to question their decisions. My relationship with my mom has always been special. After my dad died from a sudden heart attack 5 years ago, we became even closer. Dad's death was a shock to everyone. He was only 58, relatively healthy, no history of heart problems. One day, he was fine, working in the garage on his woodworking projects. And the next day, he collapsed and was gone before the ambulance even arrived. The medical examiner said it was acute cardiac arrest, a massive heart attack that killed him almost instantly. Mom was devastated. We all were. But she and I leaned on each other through that grief. We became best friends as much as mother and daughter. I trusted her with everything. My problems at work, my dating life, my finances, my health. She was the first person I called when anything happened, good or bad. So when she told me she had a new treatment plan for my migraines, I didn't hesitate. This was last Tuesday, 6 months into this nightmare of constant pain and failed treatments. I went to her office for what I thought would be just another regular appointment, but when I walked into her exam room, she seemed different, excited, almost eager. "I've been doing research," she told me, pulling up her chair close to mine. "There's a medication that's very effective for treatment-resistant migraines like yours. It's not commonly prescribed in the United States, but I have access to it through special channels. Isabel, I really think this could be the answer we've been looking for." I felt hope for the first time in months. "Really? You think this will actually work?" "I do," she said, already writing out the prescription. "I want you to start taking it today. Pick it up from the pharmacy on your way home and take the first dose tonight with dinner. We'll see how you respond over the next week." She handed me the prescription, and I looked at it. The medication name was Proxalan. I'd never heard of it before, but that didn't mean anything. I'm not a medical professional. There are thousands of medications I've never heard of. "Are there any side effects I should know about?" I asked. "Some people experience mild nausea or dizziness when they first start taking it," Mom said. "But those usually go away after a few days. If you have any problems, call me immediately. But Isabel, I have a really good feeling about this one." I left her office feeling lighter than I had in months. Maybe this would finally work. Maybe I could get my life back. Maybe I could stop canceling plans and calling in sick to work and spending half my life in a dark room waiting for pain to pass. I drove straight to Mason's Pharmacy on J Street, a small independent pharmacy I'd been to dozens of times before. It was close to my house, and the pharmacists there were always friendly and helpful. But when I walked up to the counter and handed over my prescription, there was someone new working there. A woman I'd never seen before, maybe in her mid-40s, with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Her name tag said, "Helena Reyes, Pharm D." "I'll get this filled for you right away," Helena said, taking the prescription from me. She scanned it into the computer and then walked back to the shelves where the medications were stored. I waited at the counter, scrolling through my phone and thinking about what I'd make for dinner. When Helena came back a few minutes later with a white paper bag, her whole demeanor had changed. She looked troubled, almost distressed. She put the bag on the counter, but didn't let go of it when I reached for it. "Ms. Chen," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure no other customers were close enough to hear. "I need to tell you something important." I smiled, confused. "Is there a problem with my insurance or something?" Helena leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Don't take these pills. When you get home, throw them out. Don't take even one." I actually laughed because the whole situation seemed so bizarre. What? Why would I throw them out? My doctor prescribed them for my migraines. I've been suffering for 6 months. Helena's grip on the medication bag tightened. She looked around again, clearly uncomfortable. "I understand this seems strange, but please, you need to trust me. This medication is dangerous, extremely dangerous." "Then why would my doctor prescribe it?" I asked, starting to feel annoyed. I'd been dealing with constant pain for half a year. I just wanted relief. And now this pharmacist I'd never met was telling me to throw away the medication my own mother, a respected physician, had prescribed? I can't explain everything right now, Helena said, her eyes darting toward the back of the pharmacy where I could see another pharmacist, probably her manager, working. But I'm begging you, trust me on this. Do not take these pills. She finally released the bag, and I took it, completely bewildered. This doesn't make any sense, I said. If there's a real problem with the medication, you should refuse to fill the prescription. I legally can't, Helena said, and I could hear genuine frustration in her voice. The prescription is valid and the medication is technically available, even though it shouldn't be. But morally, I cannot let you walk out of here without warning you. She looked me directly in the eyes. Please, throw them out. I left the pharmacy feeling unsettled and confused. I sat in my car for almost 10 minutes, just staring at the white paper bag in the passenger seat. The pills inside were supposed to help me. My mother, who loved me and who was a trained physician, had prescribed them, but Helena had seemed genuinely frightened, not just concerned. Her warning felt urgent and real. I pulled out my phone and called my best friend Anita. We've known each other since college, and she's the person I call when I need to process something weird or confusing. She answered on the second ring. Hey, what's up? She said. Something really strange just happened at the pharmacy, I told her, and then I explained the whole interaction with Helena, the warning, the insistence that I throw out the medication, the look of genuine fear on her face. That's really bizarre, Anita said. What are you going to do? I don't know. I mean, my mom prescribed these. She's a doctor. She wouldn't give me something dangerous. Well, you could always Google the medication, Anita suggested. See what comes up. At least then you'd know what you're dealing with. That seemed like a reasonable idea. When I got home to my small house in the suburbs, I went straight to my laptop. The medication name was printed clearly on the label. Proxalan, 150 mg tablets. Take 1 tablet twice daily with food. I'd never heard of it, but like I said, that wasn't unusual. I opened Google and typed in Proxalan. Then I hit enter and waited for the results to load. What came up made my stomach drop and my hands start shaking. The first search result was from the British Medical Journal, dated about 2 years ago. The headline made my heart stop. Proxalan linked to fatal overdoses in multiple countries. Medication banned in European Union following deaths. I clicked on the article with trembling fingers, my mind refusing to accept what I was reading. According to the report, Proxalan had been prescribed for chronic pain and severe migraines in several countries throughout the early 2000s. But over time, doctors started noticing a disturbing pattern. Patients who were taking the medication as prescribed were dying suddenly from cardiac arrest. The article explained that Proxalan had what's called a narrow therapeutic window. That means the difference between a dose that works and a dose that kills you is extremely small. Even taking the prescribed amount could push someone over the edge into overdose territory, especially if they had any underlying heart conditions or if they were taking other medications that interacted with it. The article listed at least 15 documented deaths directly linked to Proxalan before the European Union banned it completely. After that, country after country followed suit. Australia banned it. Canada banned it. Japan banned it. According to what I was reading, 47 countries around the world had made this medication illegal. I kept scrolling, finding more and more articles, medical journals, news reports, patient advocacy groups warning about the dangers. One article from a medical safety organization stated bluntly, Proxalan should never be prescribed under any circumstances. The risks far outweigh any potential benefits, and safer alternatives exist for every condition it was originally designed to treat. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. I looked at the prescription bottle sitting on my kitchen table. The dosage my mother had prescribed was 150 milliliters twice daily. That meant I was supposed to take 300 milliliters of this medication every single day. I went back to Google and searched specifically for Proxalan dosing information. What I found made me feel physically sick. Every medical source I could find said the absolute maximum safe dose of Proxalan, back when it was still legal to prescribe, was 75 milligrams once daily. And even that was considered extremely risky and only used in the most desperate cases when nothing else had worked. My mother had prescribed double that amount, and she wanted me to take it twice a day. That was 4 times the maximum safe dose. Based on everything I was reading, taking even 1 pill at the dose she'd prescribed could, potentially, trigger a fatal cardiac event. I sat frozen at my kitchen table, unable to process what this meant. This had to be a mistake. My mother wouldn't intentionally prescribe something that could kill me, but this wasn't a small error, like writing down the wrong milligram amount. This was a medication that was banned in almost every developed country in the world, prescribed at a dosage that could be lethal. How did she even have access to this? Where would she get it? And why would she give it to me at such a dangerous dose? I pulled out all the paperwork that came with the prescription, spreading it across the table. There it was in black and white, printed on my mother's official prescription pad. Prescriber, Dr. Patricia Chen. Patient, Isabel Chen. Medication, Proxalan, 150 milliliters. Instructions, take 1 tablet twice daily with food. Quantity, 60 tablets, a full month supply. If I had taken these pills as directed, I would have been ingesting 300 milliliters of a dangerous banned medication every single day. According to what I'd read, that could have killed me within days, maybe even after the first dose. My phone rang, making me jump. It was my mom calling. Her name and photo lit up the screen, and I just stared at it. My first instinct was to answer and ask her to explain all of this. There had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe Proxalan was different in the United States than it was in other countries. Maybe the information online was outdated. Maybe there was some medical reason for the high dose that I didn't understand as a non-medical person. But something stopped me from answering the call. I thought about Helena's face at the pharmacy, the genuine fear in her eyes, the way she'd risked her job to warn me. She'd said the medication was dangerous. She'd begged me to throw it out. Would she have done that if this was just a simple misunderstanding? The call went to voicemail. A minute later, a text came through from my mom. Hi, sweetheart, just checking in. Did you pick up your prescription? Make sure you take the first dose tonight with dinner. Love you. I stared at that text for a long time. Make sure you take the first dose tonight. Why was she so insistent? Why did she need me to start taking it immediately? I called my brother Julian in Boston. It was late, almost 10 p.m. on the East Coast, but I knew he'd still be up. He's a night owl, usually working on coding projects until midnight or later. He answered on the 3rd ring, and I could hear the concern in his voice immediately. Izzy, what's wrong? You never call this late. I need to talk to you about something, and I need you to stay calm and just listen, I said, my voice shaking. I told him everything. The 6 months of migraines, Mom taking over my treatment, the new prescription she'd given me today, Helena's warning at the pharmacy, and everything I'd found when I researched Proxalan, the banned medication, the fatal overdoses, the dangerously high dose Mom had prescribed. Julian was silent for what felt like forever. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight with controlled anger. You're telling me that Mom prescribed you a medication that's been banned in almost 50 countries because it kills people? And she prescribed it at 4 times the maximum safe dose? I don't know what I'm telling you, I admitted. That's why I'm calling. This has to be a mistake, right? There has to be an explanation. Izzy, doctors don't make mistakes like that, Julian said carefully. Prescribing a banned medication at a potentially lethal dose isn't like accidentally writing down the wrong number. That's not a simple error. That's something else entirely. He paused, and I could hear him moving around, probably pacing like he always did when he was upset. Have you taken any of the pills? No. The pharmacist's warning freaked me out enough that I decided to research it first. Thank God I did. Thank God is right, Julian said. Izzy, I don't want to scare you, but I think you need to seriously consider the possibility that Mom did this on purpose. The words hung in the air between us. On purpose. My mother had tried to hurt me on purpose. The idea was so absurd, so completely impossible, that I almost laughed. Julian, that's insane. She's our mother. She loves us. Why would she ever try to hurt me? I don't know, he he said quietly. But I think you need to find out. Don't take those pills. Don't tell Mom that you know anything yet. And tomorrow, I want you to talk to that pharmacist again. Find out why she warned you. There's something going on here, and we need to understand what it is before you do anything else. After I hung up with Julian, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, searching for more information. I looked up my mother's medical practice, checking for any complaints or malpractice lawsuits. Her record with the Medical Board of California was clean. No disciplinary actions, no complaints, nothing that would suggest she was anything other than a competent, ethical physician. But then I started thinking about my father's death 5 years ago, and a terrible thought crept into my mind. Dad had died from what was ruled a sudden cardiac arrest, a massive heart attack that came out of nowhere and killed him almost instantly. He'd been 58, relatively healthy, no history of heart disease. I remembered being shocked when it happened because it seemed so random. One day he was fine, working on his woodworking projects in the garage, and the next day he was dead. The autopsy confirmed cardiac arrest, and because my mother was a physician and had been home when it happened, nobody questioned it any further. But now I was thinking about Proxalan and how all those articles said it caused cardiac arrest in overdose cases. Now I was wondering if my father's death had been as random as we all thought. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that prescription bottle sitting on my kitchen table and thought about what would have happened if I'd just trusted my mother and taken those pills without question. I kept thinking about Helena's face, the urgency in her voice, the way she'd risked her professional reputation to warn a complete stranger. By the time the sun came up Wednesday morning, I'd made a decision. I needed to go back to that pharmacy and talk to Helena. I needed to understand why she'd warned me and what she knew about my mother. Mason's pharmacy opened at 8 in the morning. I was there at 8:02, still wearing the same clothes from yesterday, because I hadn't been able to focus on anything as mundane as changing. Helena was behind the counter again, and when she saw me walk in, her eyes widened with what looked like relief mixed with concern. "Ms. Chen," she said, coming around from behind the counter, "did you take any of the pills?" "No," I said quickly. "I went home and looked up Proxalan like you suggested. I found everything, the deaths, the bans, the overdose risks. Helena, I need to talk to you, privately, please." I could hear the desperation in my own voice. "I need to know why you warned me. I need to know what you know about my mother." Helena glanced at the back of the pharmacy where another pharmacist was working, then nodded. "Let me tell my manager I'm taking my break." She disappeared for a moment, then returned and led me to a small office in the back of the pharmacy. Once the door was closed and we were alone, her professional composure cracked completely. She sat down heavily in a chair and looked at me with eyes that held deep pain. "Did you take any of the medication?" she asked again, as if she needed to hear me confirm it one more time. When I shook my head, she closed her eyes briefly in what looked like relief. "Thank God. Miss Chen, I need to tell you something, and it's going to be very difficult to hear." She took a deep breath. 3 years ago, my younger sister Carmen died from Proxalan toxicity. She was being treated by a private physician for chronic back pain after a car accident. The doctor prescribed Proxalan at a high dose, told her it was a new treatment that would finally give her relief after months of suffering. Carmen trusted her doctor completely. She took the medication exactly as prescribed. Helena's voice cracked slightly, but she continued. 2 weeks later, Carmen collapsed at work. She was rushed to the hospital, but she died before they could save her. Massive cardiac arrest. She was only 39 years old and had been completely healthy, except for the back pain. At first, the doctor said it was just one of those tragic things that sometimes happen, but I'm a pharmacist. I know medications. So I started investigating what she'd been taking. I felt like I couldn't breathe. "That's when you found out about Proxalan." "Yes," Helena said. "I discovered that her doctor had prescribed a medication that had already been banned in multiple countries for causing the exact kind of death my sister experienced. I tried to file a complaint with the medical board, but the doctor claimed she didn't know about the international bans and that Carmen must have had an undiagnosed heart condition. Without more evidence, nothing happened to the doctor. She's still practicing today." Helena looked at me with intense focus. After Carmen died, I made it my mission to learn everything I could about dangerous prescription practices. I started flagging unusual prescriptions, researching medications that seemed questionable, paying attention to patterns. Patterns? I repeated. What kind of patterns? Helena pulled out her phone and opened what looked like a personal database. About 2 years ago, I started noticing that certain doctors were prescribing medications that had been banned internationally or that had serious safety concerns. Most pharmacies just filled the prescriptions without question because technically they're legal in the United States, even if they shouldn't be. But I kept track, and your mother's name came up multiple times. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. What do you mean? My mother has prescribed Proxylan before. At least 3 times in the past 2 years that I know of, Helena said quietly. All at this pharmacy, all at dangerously high doses, all to different patients. I flagged it with my manager after the second time, but he said that as long as the prescriptions are technically valid, we have to fill them. It's not illegal to prescribe Proxylan in the United States. It's just extremely unethical given what we know about its dangers. Yesterday, when I saw another Proxylan prescription from Dr. Patricia Chen, and I saw that the patient had the same last name, I knew I had to say something. I couldn't let it happen again. What happened to the other patients? I asked, even though part of me didn't want to know the answer. The other 3 people she prescribed this to? Helena hesitated, then said, I can't give you their names because of privacy laws, but I can tell you that one of them died. Their family member came in about 6 weeks after the initial prescription trying to get a refill, and when I looked up the account, there was a deceased marker in our system. The pharmacy had been notified by the family. The other 2 patients, I don't know what happened to them. They either stopped filling the prescription here, or they moved to a different pharmacy. I felt sick. My mother had prescribed this deadly medication to at least 4 people that we knew of, and at least one of them had died. Maybe more. Why would she do this? What could she possibly gain from killing her own patients? I don't know, Helena admitted. But Ms. Chen, there's something else you should know. Proxylan isn't available through normal pharmaceutical channels in the United States. It's not FDA approved, which means it can't be ordered through legitimate suppliers. The only way to get it is through illegal importation from countries that still manufacture it, usually in Eastern Europe or Asia. Your mother had to go out of her way to obtain this medication. This wasn't a simple mistake or an outdated prescription. This was intentional. I thought about my father again, about his sudden death from cardiac arrest 5 years ago. Helena, if someone died from Proxylan, would it show up in an autopsy? Would they be able to tell it was the medication that killed them? Not necessarily, Helena said, understanding immediately where my thoughts had gone. Proxylan causes cardiac arrest, but cardiac arrest can have dozens of causes. Unless the medical examiner specifically tests for Proxylan, which they wouldn't unless they had reason to suspect it, it would just look like a natural heart attack. That's part of what makes it so dangerous, and why some doctors who want to harm patients choose medications like this. I made my decision in that moment. I needed to confront my mother, but I needed to do it carefully. I needed proof of what she'd done, and I needed to protect myself in case she tried to hurt me in some other way. Helena, would you be willing to talk to the police about what you know? About my mother's prescribing patterns and the patient who died? Yes, she said without hesitation. I've wanted to report this for a long time, but I needed someone to come forward first. A patient or a family member. I'm just a pharmacist, flagging suspicious prescriptions. But if you make a formal complaint, I can provide supporting evidence. She pulled a business card from her pocket and wrote her personal cell phone number on the back. Call me anytime, day or night. And Ms. Chen, please be careful. If your mother was willing to prescribe you a lethal dose of medication, I don't know what else she might be capable of. I left the pharmacy and sat in my car, my mind racing. I called Julian again. I need you to do something for me, I said when he answered. I need you to call your detective friend, the one you play basketball with. I need to talk to a police officer I can trust, someone who will take this seriously and investigate it properly. What are you going to do? Julian asked, and I could hear the worry in his voice. I'm going to confront Mom, I said, but I'm going to record the conversation. If she admits to anything, we'll have proof. And Julian, I need you to look into Dad's death. Get the autopsy report if you can. I need to know if there's any way to test for Proxalan after someone's been dead for 5 years. You think Mom killed Dad too? Julian's voice was barely a whisper. I don't know what I think anymore, I admitted, but I need to find out the truth, whatever it is. Julian worked fast. By noon that same day, he'd connected me with Detective Marco Santos from the Sacramento Police Department, a friend from his college days who now worked in the Crimes Against Persons Unit. I met Detective Santos at a coffee shop near my house and told him everything. The prescription, Helena's warning, the research I'd done, the other patients, the suspicious dosage. He listened carefully, taking notes, and when I finished, he leaned back in his chair with a grim expression. This is serious, he said. If what you're telling me is accurate, your mother could be facing charges of attempted murder at minimum, and possibly multiple counts of murder if we can connect her to other patient deaths. But we need evidence. We need her to admit to something concrete, or we need to find documentation of what she's been doing. He pulled out a small device from his jacket pocket. This is a recording device. It's legal in California to record a conversation as long as one party consents, and you're consenting. I want you to wear this when you confront your mother. Get her talking. If she admits to prescribing the medication knowing it was dangerous, that's evidence we can use. My hands shook as I took the device. It was smaller than I expected, about the size of a flash drive. Detective Santos showed me how to clip it inside my jacket pocket, positioned so it would pick up voices clearly. Are you sure you want to do this? He asked. Once you start this conversation, there's no going back. Your relationship with your mother will never be the same, regardless of what we find out. I need to know the truth, I said, even if it destroys everything. I drove to my mother's medical office that afternoon without calling ahead. I didn't want to give her any warning, any time to prepare a story or an excuse. When I walked into the waiting room, the receptionist looked surprised to see me. Isabel, did you have an appointment today? I don't see you on the schedule. No, but I need to see my mom right away. It's urgent. Family emergency. The receptionist made a quick call, and a few minutes later, my mother emerged from an exam room, concern written across her face. She was wearing her white coat, the one with her name embroidered on it in blue thread. Dr. Patricia Chen. She looked exactly like what she was supposed to be. A caring physician, a loving mother. Isabel? What's wrong? Are you okay? She put her hand on my arm, and I had to fight the urge to pull away. I need to talk to you, privately. It can't wait. My voice came out steadier than I felt. She led me back to her private office, the same office where I'd sat hundreds of times before, talking about my life, my problems, my future. She closed the door behind us and gestured for me to sit down. Instead, I placed the pill bottle on her desk, right in the center where she couldn't miss it. I didn't take them, I said. A pharmacist at Mason's warned me not to, so I looked up Proxalan. Do you want to tell me why you prescribed a medication that's been banned in 47 countries and that's killed at least 15 people? For just a fraction of a second, something flickered across my mother's face. Was it surprise? Fear? Anger? But then her expression smoothed into professional concern. Isabel, I can explain. Proxalan isn't actually banned in the United States. It's just not commonly used because most doctors aren't familiar with it. For certain cases of treatment-resistant migraines like yours, it can be remarkably effective when other medications have failed. At 150 micrograms twice daily? I pressed, my voice getting stronger. Mom, the maximum safe dose is 75 micrograms once a day, and that's only in extreme cases. You prescribed 4 times that amount. You prescribed enough to kill me. She stood up from her desk, her body language shifting from concerned to defensive. Where are you getting this information? From the internet? Isabel, you can't trust everything you read online. I went to medical school. I've been practicing medicine for 30 years. I know what I'm doing, and I know what's safe for my patients. Don't you trust me? I'm your mother. I talked to the pharmacist, I said, refusing to back down. Helena Reyes. She told me you've prescribed Proxalan to at least 3 other patients at that pharmacy. She told me that one of them died. Is that true? My mother's face hardened. I watched her transform from the loving mother I'd known my whole life into someone I didn't recognize. That pharmacist had no right to discuss my other patients with you. That's a violation of privacy laws. She could lose her license for that. So it is true, I said. You've prescribed this to other people, and at least one of them died. Mom, why? Why would you do this? She sat back down slowly, and for a long moment she just looked at me. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, colder. You don't understand what it's been like for me. After your father died, I was left with nothing. His business had failed. We were drowning in debt that you and Julian knew nothing about. The life insurance barely covered what we owed. I was 55 years old, facing the possibility of losing everything I'd worked for my entire life. So you found a way to make money? I asked, horrified. By killing people? She flinched at the word killing, but didn't deny it. They were already suffering. Most of them were elderly or chronically ill. I was ending their pain and helping their families move on. And yes, I was compensated for prescribing certain medications through a pharmaceutical contact overseas. It was a solution that helped everyone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mother was actually justifying murder. And Dad? I whispered. The question I'd been afraid to ask. Did you kill him too? The silence that followed was answer enough. Patricia didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. She just looked at me with an expression that was equal parts defiance and something that might have been regret. Your father was going to lose everything, she finally said. His business was bankrupt. We would have had to sell the house, destroy our credit, ruin our reputation. The life insurance policy I'd taken out on him 6 months earlier was worth $500,000. It saved us from financial ruin. My stomach turned. You killed your own husband for insurance money, and then you tried to kill me too. Why? Why would you try to murder your own daughter? That's when her expression turned truly cold, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Pure calculation. You've been a financial burden since your father died, Isabel. Always struggling on your teacher's salary, always needing help with bills, always depending on me to bail you out. I took out a life insurance policy on you 2 years ago, a $750,000 policy. If you'd taken those pills and died from what would have been ruled a tragic heart complication, I would have finally had enough money to retire comfortably. No more working until I'm 70. No more worrying about money. I had to grip the edge of her desk to stay upright. I'm your daughter. I'm your child. How could you? She stood up, her voice rising. You're 32 years old. You're not a child anymore. You're an adult who's made poor financial decisions and expected me to fix them. I gave you life, and I would have been ending it mercifully, just like I did for your father. You would have died in your sleep. No pain, no suffering. It would have been a kindness. What my mother didn't know was that the recording device in my jacket pocket was capturing every word, every admission of murder, every justification, every cold-hearted calculation. I'd heard enough. I pulled out my phone and sent a text message to Detective Santos. It was a single word. Now. Within 30 seconds, there was a knock on my mother's office door. Dr. Chen, this is Detective Marco Santos with the Sacramento Police Department. We need to speak with you. I watched my mother's face go pale as I opened the door. Detective Santos stood there with 2 uniformed officers behind him. He looked at me and nodded slightly, confirming he'd been listening to the conversation through the wire I was wearing. Dr. Patricia Chen, you're under arrest for attempted murder, suspicion of multiple counts of first-degree murder, and medical fraud. As the officers moved forward with handcuffs, my mother's composure finally shattered. She looked at me with pure hatred. You ungrateful little bitch. After everything I've done for you, after everything I've sacrificed, this is how you repay me? You tried to murder me, I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. You killed Dad. You killed your own patients. How many, Mom? How many people did you kill? She didn't answer as they handcuffed her. Detective Santos was reading her rights, but I barely heard the words. I was watching my mother, this woman I'd loved and trusted my entire life, being arrested for trying to kill me. It felt surreal, like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. "We're going to need you to come down to the station and give a full statement," Detective Santos said to me quietly. "And we'll need that recording device. Ms. Chen, what you just did took tremendous courage. That recording is going to help us investigate all of your mother's patients and get justice for the people she's hurt." As they led my mother out of her office in handcuffs, she turned back to look at me one more time. I expected to see remorse or shame or some sign of the mother I thought I knew, but all I saw was cold anger and resentment. "I hope you can live with what you've done," she said. "Destroying your own mother, throwing away our family. You destroyed our family when you decided money was worth more than human lives," I replied. "You destroyed it when you killed Dad. You destroyed it when you tried to kill me." The investigation into my mother's crimes took 4 months and uncovered a nightmare I never could have imagined. The police obtained warrants for her medical office, her home, and her financial records. What they found was systematic, calculated, and absolutely chilling. Over the past 3 years, my mother had prescribed Proxalan to 17 different patients. 9 of them had died from what was originally ruled as natural cardiac events. When the medical examiner went back and re-examined those deaths with the knowledge that Proxalan had been prescribed, they found evidence of drug toxicity in tissue samples that had been preserved. The other 8 patients had either stopped taking the medication due to severe side effects or had been warned by someone before it was too late, just like I had been. The financial investigation revealed even more. My mother had been receiving payments of $15,000 for each Proxalan prescription from an illegal pharmaceutical operation based in Romania. She'd made over $250,000 from these deadly prescriptions over 3 years. The police also discovered that she'd taken out life insurance policies on several of her elderly patients, convincing them it was a financial planning service she offered. When those patients died after taking the medication she prescribed, she collected on those policies too. In total, the fraud and murder scheme had netted her close to $900,000, but the worst discovery came when they exhumed my father's body. I'll never forget the day Detective Santos called to tell me the results. They'd found traces of Proxalan in tissue samples, confirming what I'd suspected, but desperately hoped wasn't true. My mother had killed my father 5 years ago, poisoning him with the same medication she'd later tried to use on me. She'd taken out a $500,000 life insurance policy on him 6 months before his death. It hadn't been a tragic heart attack. It had been cold-blooded, premeditated murder. My brother Julian flew out from Boston the day after Mom's arrest and didn't leave my side for weeks. We had to plan Dad's second funeral, a small private service where we could properly grieve for him, knowing the truth about how he died. Julian took a leave of absence from his job to help me deal with the media attention, the lawyers, and the crushing weight of what our mother had done. We held each other and cried more times than I can count. We'd lost our father to murder, and our mother to her own evil choices. In the span of a few days, we'd become orphans in every way that mattered. The trial was a media circus. News vans camped outside the courthouse. Headlines screamed about the doctor of death and the Black Widow physician. I had to testify, playing the recording of my mother's confession in open court. Hearing her voice again, so cold and calculating as she explained why she'd tried to kill me for insurance money, made me physically ill. I had to leave the courtroom twice to vomit. But I got through it because the families of her other victims were there too, and they deserved justice for their loved ones. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: the Proxalan prescriptions, the financial records showing the illegal payments, the life insurance policies, the exhumed tissue samples from my father's body, and my recording where she'd admitted everything. My mother's defense attorney tried to argue that she had some kind of mental break after Dad's death, that she wasn't in her right mind, but the evidence showed careful planning over years. This wasn't a breakdown. This was a business model based on murder. Patricia Chen was found guilty on 9 counts of first-degree murder, 8 counts of attempted murder including mine, multiple counts of insurance fraud, medical fraud, and conspiracy to distribute illegal pharmaceuticals. The judge called her crimes some of the most calculating and cold-blooded acts of betrayal this court has ever seen. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. 9 consecutive life sentences, one for each person she'd murdered. As they led her out of the courtroom after sentencing, she looked at me one final time. I don't know what she expected to see. Forgiveness? Regret? But all I felt was numbness and relief that she could never hurt anyone else again. The months after the trial were the hardest of my life. I was in intensive therapy 3 times a week, trying to process the trauma of discovering that my own mother had tried to murder me and had successfully murdered my father. My migraines, ironically, disappeared completely once I understood what had really been happening. My therapist explained that the headaches had likely been psychosomatic, my body's response to the stress and subtle psychological manipulation my mother had been putting me through. She'd been gaslighting me for months, making me doubt myself, making me dependent on her for medical care, all while planning to kill me. I took a semester off from teaching because I couldn't focus on anything. My principal was understanding, telling me to take all the time I needed. Julian moved back to California permanently, getting a remote job so he could be closer to me. We needed each other more than ever. We were the only family we had left, and we had to figure out how to rebuild our lives from the rubble our mother had created. Helena Reyes became more than just the pharmacist who saved my life. She became a friend. We met for coffee every week, and she told me more about her sister Carmen and her own journey of grief and advocacy. Together, we founded a non-profit organization called Prescription Watch. Our mission is to educate patients about medication safety, help people verify their prescriptions, and create better oversight systems to catch dangerous prescribing patterns before they kill people. We've lobbied for state legislation requiring pharmacies to flag medications that have been banned internationally, even if they're technically legal in the United States. If this story made you think differently about medical care and trust, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. This could save someone's life. Helena and I also started a support group for people who'd survived murder attempts by family members or medical professionals. It's a specific kind of trauma that most people can't understand. How do you process the fact that someone who was supposed to love and protect you tried to end your life? The group helped me realize I wasn't alone in these feelings. One woman had been poisoned by her husband over months. Another had been overdosed on medications by a nurse who was supposed to be caring for her. We all carried the same confusion, betrayal, and complicated grief. The hardest part, something I admitted in group one day, was that part of me still loved my mother. Even after everything she'd done, even knowing she'd murdered my father and tried to murder me, I couldn't just turn off 32 years of loving her. I keep having these moments where I want to call her and tell her something funny that happened, I confessed to the group. And then I remember that she's in prison for trying to kill me, and I feel insane. An older woman in the group, whose son had tried to kill her for her inheritance, reached over and squeezed my hand. That's not insane, honey. That's being human. Love doesn't disappear just because someone betrays you. You're mourning the mother you thought you had while accepting the reality of who she actually was. That's one of the hardest things a person can do. I eventually returned to teaching, but at a different school. Too many people at my old school knew the whole story and couldn't look at me without seeing the woman whose mother tried to murder her. At my new school, I was just Ms. Chen, the English teacher who was passionate about literature and genuinely cared about her students. I also started speaking at medical schools and pharmacy programs about the importance of ethical oversight and the courage it takes to question authority when something seems wrong. Helena Reyes risked her job to save my life, I tell students. She saw something that didn't seem right, and instead of staying quiet or assuming someone else would handle it, she spoke up. That's what ethical healthcare looks like. It's not just about following protocols. It's about trusting your instincts when something seems dangerous. 2 years after my mother's conviction, I'm in a much better place. I still have hard days where the weight of what happened feels crushing. I still go to therapy regularly. I still struggle with trusting people, especially doctors. I get second and third opinions on everything now, and I research every medication I'm prescribed. Some people might call that paranoid, but I call it being informed and careful. My trust was violated in the most fundamental way possible, and I'm allowed to be cautious about rebuilding it. Julian and I created a new tradition. Every Sunday, we have dinner together and we talk about Dad. We share memories of him, the real him, not the version Mom wanted us to remember. We talk about his terrible jokes, his love of woodworking, the way he used to dance in the kitchen while cooking breakfast. We're reclaiming our father's memory from the shadow of how he died. He deserves to be remembered for how he lived, not just for how he was murdered. I also reconnected with several of the families of my mother's other victims. We formed a sort of informal support network, people bound together by the horrible actions of one person, but determined not to let those actions define us. We attend each other's memorial services, send cards on difficult anniversaries, and check in on each other during the holidays, when grief tends to hit hardest. One woman, whose elderly father had been one of my mother's victims, told me something that helped. Your mother's evil doesn't make you evil. Her choices don't define you. How you respond to what she did, that's what defines you. The most important lesson I've learned from this nightmare is to trust my instincts. For months before Helena's warning, I'd felt like something was wrong. Things seemed off. My body was telling me I was in danger, but I ignored those feelings because I didn't want to seem paranoid or ungrateful. I talked myself out of my own gut instincts because I trusted my mother more than I trusted myself. That almost cost me my life. Now, when something feels wrong, I investigate. I ask questions. I get second opinions. I don't care if it seems excessive or if people think I'm being too careful. Being alive and cautious is better than being dead and trusting. I want anyone watching this to understand something crucial. Medical professionals deserve respect, but they don't deserve blind obedience. You have every right to question your treatment, to research your medications, to ask why something is being prescribed and what the alternatives are. A good doctor will welcome those questions because they want informed, engaged patients. A bad doctor will get defensive or try to make you feel stupid for asking. That defensiveness is a red flag. Trust it. Also, please understand that pharmacists are not just pill counters. They're highly trained healthcare professionals who often catch dangerous drug interactions, incorrect dosages, and questionable prescriptions. Helena Reyes saved my life because she took her professional responsibility seriously. She didn't just fill the prescription and collect her paycheck. She looked at what was being prescribed, recognized the danger, and had the courage to warn me even though it put her job at risk. We need more healthcare professionals like her, people who care more about patient safety than about avoiding confrontation or following orders without question. If you're in a situation right now where something feels wrong with your medical care, please speak up. Talk to another doctor. Call a patient advocate. Contact your state medical board. Do your own research on any medications you're prescribed. Check if they've been banned in other countries. Look up the recommended dosages. Make sure what you're being told to take makes sense. Your life might depend on it. I'll probably never fully understand why my mother did what she did. The money doesn't entirely explain it. Yes, she was in debt after Dad's business failed. Yes, she wanted financial security. But $900,000 over 3 years isn't enough money to justify 10 murders and 8 attempted murders. The psychological evaluation done for her trial suggested she might have developed some kind of God complex, believing she had the right to decide who lived and who died. But even that doesn't fully explain how a woman who seemed loving and normal could become a serial killer. What I do know is that my mother made choices. She chose to kill my father. She chose to kill her patients. She chose to try to kill me. Those were her decisions, and she's paying the consequences for them now. She's been in prison for 2 years, and I've never visited her. She's written me dozens of letters, but I return them all unopened. I don't owe her my forgiveness, or my time, or my emotional energy. Some people think that makes me cold or unforgiving, but I disagree. Setting boundaries with someone who tried to murder you isn't cruel. It's survival. I'm 34 now, 2 years older than I was when Helena handed me that prescription and whispered a warning that saved my life. I have a good life. I love my job. I have strong friendships. Julian and I are closer than we've ever been. I'm even dating again, slowly and carefully, learning to trust people in small increments. I have a therapist I trust, and a support system that holds me up on the hard days. My story doesn't have a perfectly happy ending, because life doesn't work that way. I'm not over it, and I probably never will be completely, but I'm healing. I'm building a life that isn't defined by what my mother did to me, but by how I've chosen to move forward. I'm using my experience to help other people, to advocate for better protections in healthcare, to teach people to trust their instincts. So here's my final message to you. Trust yourself. Question authority when something doesn't feel right. Listen to the people who warn you, even if the warning seems to come from an unexpected source. Research your medications. Get second opinions. Don't let anyone, not even a family member or a medical professional, make you doubt your own gut feelings when they're telling you something is wrong. Helena Reyes trusted her instincts and saved my life. I'm forever grateful that she had the courage to speak up when she could have just stayed silent and filled the prescription like she was supposed to. One person's courage can change everything. One warning can save a life. One question can prevent a tragedy. I'm Isabel Chen, and I'm a survivor. Not a victim, but a survivor. My mother tried to kill me and failed. She killed my father and 8 other innocent people, and she's spending the rest of her life in prison for it. That's her story. My story is about survival, healing, advocacy, and the incredible power of trusting your instincts and speaking up when something isn't right. That's the story I choose to tell.